This presentation was recorded at MVCConf. For more content like this, go to www.mvcconf.com. JetBrains, the leading vendor of professional development tools, now offers a range of new products for .NET developers. In addition to ReSharper, the top-class productivity extension for Visual Studio, you can now use .cover to run coverage analysis for your applications, .trace to find performance bottlenecks, and use TeamCity and UTrack for a perfect combination of continuous integration and issue tracking software. Go to www.jetbrains.com for more information.
Now, but it's also predominantly where most of my development is at this point in the MVC space. I am going to be using MVC 2.0. I do have this on Visual Studio 2008, but if you have I've run this under Visual Studio 2010, and it works just fine there as well. I will be using essentially the default project template. I'm not going to really be adding anything. I'm pretty much going to be sticking within the box of MVC here. Now at the bottom it says I'll be using Firefox and Firebug to step through JavaScript code. I'll also be using the Visual Studio IDE and Internet Explorer as well. Just a little bit more about me. I'm a Philadelphia-based software developer. My name's John Peterson, and I write for Code Magazine, and I blog on Los Techies along with Eric and a bunch of other folks, or what I like to call the Austin Mafia, and Rod Paddock and those guys. My basic focus is MVC, jQuery, and JavaScript. So let's talk a little bit about where we're going here and talk about jQuery. Here is this is the home site, jquery.com, and essentially jQuery it's a JavaScript library, and it makes it amazingly simple to navigate through an HTML document. Before jQuery, you really had to know a lot about the DOM, the document object model, and with all that, the bar to really getting up and productive very quickly was quite high, and with jQuery, it really became very enabling for developers. Now what I'm going to do here is, this is going to be my first test at kind of switching between my desktop and the PowerPoint here. So we're going to take a stab here at doing this, and let's see how this goes. Let's see here. So hopefully you all can see my desktop. I hope you can. Let's see here. Res is a little high, so they may scroll through parts of your screen. Okay, well, let me try something very quickly here before I let me just try one thing here. Let me just see if I can't set my res real quick.
John, you should be okay. I think you're okay. I think I may have been a little critical of that. So I haven't gotten any complaints or anything, so I think we're good.
All right, very good. Well, of course, this is what happens when you're the first one of the day, so thanks, Zane. Appreciate that. Okay, so to talk a little bit about jQuery, and this is the home site, jquery.com. In fact, let me just go to the home page. Here we are, jquery.com. And essentially all this is free, and there are tons of resources on this. This is all completely open source. And the one thing, you hear John Russick talk about how jQuery is run, essentially run it like a business, as if they were a software company that were selling you, that you had to pay for the software. You will be amazed with all the documentation that's out there. I'll click on the documentation here quickly here to show you anything you could possibly want to know, how to download, how it works, FAQs, tutorials. Everything is up here. And as you will see in a moment, jQuery is really divided up into a number of very specific areas. So I encourage you to bookmark jQuery.com. I encourage you to bookmark jQuery.com and to take a look through it. So with that, let's go ahead and run through a jQuery demo here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio. Now again, this is just basically a default MVC project with very, very little added to it. And typically what I do is I start with just the default project. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop debugging, and then I'm going to start debugging again, just so that you can see this thing start from the very beginning. Okay. So, and before I go any further, let's just take a quick perusal here through the project. So we have our controllers, and in our controllers we have, this is again the default project template, an account controller, a home controller. In our views we have account views and home views, and under home we have an index page. This is exactly the way to when you do a brand new MVC project, if you're using the default template, this is the way it's going to start. So here we are, and this is the main, this is your first MVC application, and you can see that there's all kinds of stuff on here. And you can see we got some animations and we have some things going on here. So let's take a look at the top here. It says this text was injected by jQuery. Well, how did that work? Well, to understand how that works, we really need to go to the beginning of our application and see how we get things set up. Now, by default, MVC has the jQuery scripts already provided for you. And if you go to the scripts folder, you're going to see jQuery in here already. And there are there's Ajax libraries here for you. A lot of these JavaScript libraries are already going to be made available to you. But just because they're available here in the scripts folder, that doesn't mean you can actually use them right away. They're not usable because your pages have to be aware. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a spin over to our site master. Now this is our global template. This is under the shared folder under views. And what I'm going to do is open up the site master, and we're going to take a peek at the top here. Now you can see that I've got scripts. I have some scripts that I am referencing: Microsoft Ajax, Microsoft MVC Ajax, jQuery, jQuery validation, which is another library I'll be using. I also have another one here called masked input. Now this is, you can see here that we're using the URL helper, some of the helper functions here. But I also just showed an alternative way of referencing these scripts just through regular HTML. So here I'm referencing the jQuery UI JavaScript library and also something called the time picker JavaScript library. The basic pattern is going to be this. As you're working with JavaScript and jQuery, you're going to find plugins and things like that that you want to use. Typically, you will download some sort of library. You'll install that library in your scripts folder, and then you will make reference to it either globally in your site master page, or if it's only relevant to a specific page, you might just, you might put this exact reference in a specific ASPX view. So once we've done this, and once we have all this in place, then we can go to our specific pages which inherit off of this site master. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up the index view. And we're going to look at the index view from top to bottom here. And hold up, don't want to edit the name. Want to bring it up. There it is. Okay, so for the most part, this index view is basically, for the most part, the same as it was when we, in terms of form, when we started, when this was a brand new project straight out of the template. Now, if you remember, I just said that sometimes you've got scripts that are maybe specific to a page. And a good practice is that, and by the way, you can embed your scripts either directly in a page, which I'm going to show you that, which is this stuff right here, or you can make reference to a JavaScript library. As much as possible, you want to have your code factored as well as you possibly can, and that involves being dividing perhaps your files and your scripts in a specific file. So what I've done for purposes of this presentation, I've created something called demo.js, and here is that JavaScript file, and you can see it's just a series of functions, series of functions that we're going to be going through. And you'll see that the JavaScript looks very much like C# in a lot of ways. But like any function library, you have to make whatever your calling client is, your application, your page, whatever it is, you need to make it aware. So again, I'm not using this all over the place. I'm just using it in this page. So here I'm just making reference to demo.js. So when the page loads up, it knows that information, that code is available. If we go down here, we have a script tag. And so by now, because I've referenced jQuery in my site master, it's available to me. This is something that you're going to want to be very aware of, and this is having things kick off when the document is ready. And this is how we do that. Essentially, the way you read this is when the document is ready, invoke this function. And we have this inline function. And you can see I'm doing a few things here. I'm animating a message, which, by the way, animating a message, you will see an example of this in the Nerd Dinner application, which is the exemplar MVC application that Scott Gu and Scott Hanselman and Rob Connery and Phil Hack have worked on and put a Rocks book out on. By the way, examining the Nerd Dinner application is a great way to really get a good handle on how MVC operates, but also it's a deceptively simple application. The business problem isn't all that difficult, but what you'll see in that application and what's really cool about it is that it has elements of Ajax, it has elements of jQuery, it has elements of JSON in there. So you're getting a vertical slice of a lot of different things. And it's a really good application to look at for that. And one of the things that you see is animate message. For instance, when you RSVP to a dinner in Nerd Dinner, you'll see the thing kind of blow up and it goes to the text expands and it goes to red. That's all done through jQuery. Now, let's go back to the page real quick and let's take a look at our our page here. Excuse me. Let me go ahead and run this one more time. Okay, so you see that when this page loaded, we have this default text, which is in the default application. It's right there when you create your first page to learn more about ASP MVC. Let's take a look at our page, and let's go down here a little bit to where we get to the HTML. Now, one of the things, and the way jQuery works is it works based on selecting elements. And to select elements, you have to be able to identify them somehow. And in the jQuery world, there's basically two ways, in the HTML world, there's basically two ways that we go about doing that. One is through an ID, but there's also a way to do this through classes, but we're going to concentrate on giving things an ID first. So you can see that I have a div tag here, and I wrapped this to learn more about ASP.NET MVC visit, and here's the href, and here's the website. So I've given this ID I've given this div tag an ID of message 2. Let's go back up here to this animate message. Now notice that there's a function somewhere called animate message, and I'm passing it an argument, hash pound message 2, hash message 2. So this is the way that we identify IDs. We preface it with the hash symbol, and then we give it the name of the ID. Let's go over to demo because that's where this function is. I'm going to go over to demo, and we're going to go down to animate, and here it is. Let me just hit enter a couple times just to bring this down. So animate message, and here's the argument div, and then here is the code that gets invoked. $, which is really just a shorthand for jQuery, div, which is just a character. So this is, I'm selecting it. I'm basically saying the thing that this is that I passed in, invoke an animate method, and then make the font size 2.5, whatever that unit of measure is, and doing it over 700 milliseconds. So that's the length of time to do it. And then there's other things that we can do in terms of colors and other more animated things. Now, what I'm going to do as a demo here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change. I'm just going to call this message 3. I'm going to hit save. Now, because I'm only affecting HTML, there's no reason for me to have to recompile anything. I'm not doing any script that requires server-side processing, so there's no reason to compile. I'm going to go back over to my page here, and then I'm going to hit refresh. Now, notice that the effects aren't there. And the reason why the effects aren't there is because the selector still did its work. It's looking for something called message 2. Let me go back up here. And this is sort of a cursing and a blessing of jQuery. If it's a non-existent element, jQuery will just do whatever it does, but it won't affect anything. So that it doesn't throw an exception. So this is an example of where doing UI testing with things like Selenium or whatever tool that you like to use is really important for a lot of this type of work, because if you fat finger something, there isn't going to be a compiler or some type of exception checking to make sure. There, for all I know, and I've never really checked this out, but there could be a jQuery plugin out there that may do that type of checking for you, that if you passed in a non-existent element, you might be able to extend things. And if there isn't such a thing, that actually might be a good idea for...
Hey, John, let me jump in for a sec. Got a quick question here.
Yes.
We've got somebody asking, they say, I've been trying to implement jQuery tabs on master pages, but have not been able to do so. Any guidance on that, or places where they can go to get guidance on that?
Sure. Well, one place to go, and let me just go ahead and fast forward to jQuery, the jQuery UI site. So if you remember at the beginning of this talk, I was discussing how jQuery is divided up into several different areas. One is the core JI libraries, but then there's the consumption of those libraries, and this is jQueryUI.com. So these are all of the user interface elements that are incident to jQuery. So, for example, here's tabs under widgets. So this is jQueryUI.com, and I'm going to go ahead and click on tabs, and then here it is. Here is the example, and then here is the overview of it. Here are the options in terms of what's available. Here are the events that fire. Here are the methods. Here's how you can theme it. And then on top of that, here are all the examples. So in terms of how you can have different ways of, see how I mouse over? See, I guess you really can't tell that I'm not clicking, but
yeah, no, it looks good. The screen refresh is a little slow, so give it a second or two, and then
okay. Okay. So really, for any type of user interface element, which I'm going to demo one of these, go to jQuery UI, because, and by the way, you'll keep pinching yourself. It's like, wow, this is all for free too. And then and of course, I should say, Telerik put out a wonderful set of MVC extensions that are based on jQuery, and there's a really cool grid control. I don't obviously have enough time to show all this stuff. I know there's a guy from Telerik in this room, maybe after me, I'm not sure, but that will be a great demo, I'm sure. And it's basically building on all of these core core technologies. So I hope that answers the question. So anyway, if we go back to the page here, you see how animate message works. I'm going to go ahead and just put that back to message 2. Let's go back to the page here quickly and see what we have on the rest of our page. I'll go ahead and hit refresh. And obviously I can't tell what the refresh rates are on your end. So if I'm going past it, Zane, just keep jumping in and hold me back if you have to. So here's an interesting one. This text was injected by jQuery. We're just going to go to the top here, and if you look at this HTML, you're not going to find anything in here that really says, hey, this content was injected by HTML or by jQuery, except for up here. See here we have another selector, new HTML. So right off the bat, you know that there's a tag. There's a div tag down here, right here. It's empty. It's just div ID new HTML close tag. That's it. There's nothing in here. So one of the interesting things that you can do is when page loads up, imagine that you have a situation where based on the user that's logged in, there may be some additional HTML elements that you want to put out on the form. It's based on some type of security role or some type of role membership that they're in. Well, how could you do something like that? Well, you could basically do something like this where, hey, when the page loads up, and maybe this would be wrapped with a lot of conditional logic, but new HTML property, go ahead and set the property, and you can see here, this is just straight HTML. It's an H1 tag, and that actually gets to kind of going back, taking a step back for a second. Why do all this? Well, a lot of us were Windows Forms developers for many years, and you know the basic rip on web-based application is that you're losing a lot of the UI-rich features in the event model and the absolute control over the events that you have with a traditional Windows Forms application or today with a WPF application or something like that. And to some degree, that's probably still true. Not everything that you can do in a Windows Forms application you can do in a web application. I would also argue that you shouldn't try to do everything. There are certainly many situations where a Windows Forms or WPF application is still the way to go. But the important thing is that jQuery opens up and makes it very enabling to do a lot of those user interface type elements, and also to have the level of control that we had in the Windows Forms world, and that's what jQuery and jQuery UI gives us. So here we're able to inject text very easily. Now let's take a look at, and now I'm getting into by the way, I'm getting into the jQuery UI aspect of things here. This next line of code says, select the date object that's down here, which is right here. I have a text box, and you can see here that I'm using the MVC helper function here, and I'm laying down a text box. I'm calling it date, and what I'm doing is I'm essentially invoking the date picker method, and I'm passing some arguments. And if we go back to Site Master real quick, remember I have within the jQuery UI space I have the date date time, but then I also have this time picker extension here, and that's what allows that to occur. So what I'm basically here is I'm just sending in some parameters. How does this work? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the page again. And I'm just going to go ahead and click in here and check that out, guys. See that? See, that was all the coding that was required to make this happen. Let's go back to it. That's it. And because it's in the document ready, when the page loads up, everything is bound up for me. It's all taken care of. And there are all kinds of additional parameters that you can pass in here. Again, just with the question with the tab interface, if I run over to jQuery UI quickly, widgets, date picker. See? So it's right there. And then these are all of the options that you get. You can localize it. I know we have a lot of international folks online with us here, so my stuff will be in terms of North America. However, this is all localized to Europe, Asia, wherever. You can even display multiple, look at this, multiple months. This is all just parameter driven. And this also, real quick, when we talk about the orange and we talk about the fonts and everything, this gets me to the third aspect of jQuery is the theme roller. So a lot of this is CSS-based, cascading style sheets, and how you do it. And we're going to talk about CSS in a couple minutes. But basically, if you look at these three sites, you got jquery.com, which is the core library. You have jQuery UI that goes into how to extend the library with all these user interface elements. Then you have jQuery, the theme roller, which basically is, okay, I have a core library, I have ways to extend it, how do I stylize it? And that's how these three sites work together. So if we go back here, we see that this is how we go ahead and we implement the date picker. Now, I want to skip down here, and I want to take a look at this code here. Again, if we go back to the site master, you'll see that I have a script reference here to something called masked input. In the Windows Forms WPF world, it's pretty easy to do an input mask on a control, but how do you do that in the web world? Well, we can do that too. I have something called phone input, but notice in this case it's not a hashtag, it's a dot. This is how we refer to classes. So let's take a look down at our HTML here, and let's go down to these two lines here. Now, basically, I have, and I'm doing this the old-fashioned way, because when you look at this code, I just want to show you both ways of doing stuff. You can do it through the helper function up here, or you can do it this way as well with just straight HTML. I just never want to lose sight of the fact that this just produces this type of HTML. Now notice here that we have an input type text, class, phone input, class, phone input. This one's for fax, this one's for phone. So one way that we identify things to a selector is with an ID, but what if you want to affect a class of objects? Well, these both share the same class, phone input. Essentially what I'm saying here is select everything that is of the phone input class and make its mask this. Let's go back to the page. See what happens when I go in here? I can say 610-555-1212. And the same thing occurs down here because it's part of the same class. And that's how we do masked input. If I try to put an alpha in here, now obviously this couldn't handle vanity numbers in its present form. Again, you can work around that. For our internet, folks, not in North America or conform to this type of numbering, well, then you just basically use the mask that's appropriate. But I hope you can also see that with jQuery, this could be wrapped in some conditional logic. If I'm in one locale, set the mask to, and data drive it, and set it to more of an international, European type of input mask. So, yes.
We got a couple of questions here. Just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so got question one. Hey, John, I'm curious about how to test my UI using jQuery because you said it doesn't generate any exceptions.
Well, there's if we if you look at, there's one set of libraries out there called JSpec, basically for testing your JavaScript. There's one way of testing your JavaScript specifically. And that's really helpful when you have a lot of business logic in place. Another way to test your applications is with a library called Selenium. So in this, and let me run through. I don't have Selenium set up on this machine, but I'll sort of walk through it through the other demo that I have here.
Yeah, just general guidance would be fine.
Sure, absolutely, and that leads right into one of the other examples that I have here. Let's say, for example, that you have the enabled or the enabled status of an object triggered off of some other the setting of some other object, and I have such an example here. Let's take a look at. I'm going to raise this up just a little bit so make sure everybody can see it. Okay, so I have a combo box here, and then I have a text box, and I'm going to go ahead and enter stuff in. I'm going to go ahead and hit disable. Notice that this became disabled, and then now it's re-enabled. With something like Selenium, you could automate the process of toggling this, and then when it's done, inspect the attribute on this object, and you would see that it's now set to, it has an attribute of its disabled attribute is set to disabled. So that's in a nutshell how you would do something like that. And in fact, here's the code. Not only can we inject specific text in Zane, I'll get to the second question in a second, but with jQuery we can inject HTML, but we can also bind functions to events with jQuery. So that combo box is called enable disable, and I am going to invoke the bind method, and I'm going to say take its change event, excuse me, and then run this function. If the value, and you see I'm using jQuery, is enabled, and this is a little bit weird, I guess, the logic, but it's a disabled property, and I'm going to make it empty. Else, I'm going to go ahead and set the disabled property to disabled. So basically what happens is when the page loads, we're binding this function to this combo box, and every time that I toggle the value of that combo from enabled to disabled, this code is going to run. So I use jQuery to bind a function, and then within that function I'm using jQuery to basically interrogate the value, and then I'm using jQuery to set an attribute on another object. And I'm doing that interactively, but something like Selenium can do it through the front end and basically set the value to disabled. Then you would just test. You would then just test the attribute of that other object, and Selenium has a pretty decent website to go through. Second question, Zane.
Yeah. So the second question is, why are there no more examples regarding how to structure JS and specifically jQuery and enterprise MVC apps? Scripts inside views and partials are really unmaintainable, especially in Ajax-heavy applications. We need more examples of modular JavaScript with namespaces for each controller, maybe. Where can people learn about this?
It's a new website that went online, I believe, yesterday or the day before yesterday, called Enterprise jQuery. In fact, let me just Google this, or I'm sorry, Bing this thing here. Enterprise jQuery. Here it is. Enterprise jQuery basically is all about optimizing where you put your code and how you refactor it and how you organize it. It's an excellent point. It's an excellent question and an excellent point because, as you might guess, your jQuery and your JavaScript can quickly become unwieldable. And this is a site that's dedicated to helping you organize and to also more organize your plugins and write your code in such that you have more of a fluent interface and you can keep things better organized. Okay, so moving along here, because I got a bunch more stuff that I have to hit. That is jQuery in a nutshell. So then the next thing is AJAX. AJAX stands for Asynchronous JavaScript in XML. It allows us to submit and refresh specific parts of a form instead of submitting and refreshing the entire page. And it yields better performance, and AJAX is integrated into ASP MVC. So let's go through a quick AJAX demo here. Let me go to my form here. And what I'm going to do here is, oh, by the way, real quick, just as this was automated, so you can also do it manually. So anything you can have it automatically load up when the page loads up. You can also invoke these things at your whim based on some user control. I'm going to hit submit on this AJAX demo 1. Now, it says this string is from the home controller. Let's take a look at our code, and this is now over in our demo.js. All right, so and actually, let me just do this since I have this code available here, because this is just another way of doing it. AJAX demo 2. This is a string. I'm going to hit submit, and it says the string you entered was, this is a string. That's really useful. So let's take a look at what we did here. Function AJAX demo 2. What happened here? Well, what we're doing here is we are interrogating the param string value, and we're using a jQuery post. And what I am doing here is, and let me run over to AJAX demo 2. This is another way of binding events. I showed you one way of doing it where when you load up the page, you can use jQuery to bind the events. Another way, and really what is a less preferred way, but I'm still going to show it to you because you may encounter code that works this way, is you can see in line, I basically set the on-click to AJAX demo 2. In AJAX demo 1, this is actually inside of a AJAX form. And the method here is AJAX demo 1. Another way that we can work with AJAX is straight through JavaScript. So here I'm basically saying the on-click is AJAX demo 2. In both cases, we're going to the home controller, and in this JavaScript, I'm basically saying post to AJAX demo 2, and I'm sending that parameter string down. Let's take a look at our controller. This is the first time we're seeing some C# code. Here's our home controller. And by the way, folks, the whole purpose of this is you're going to see this code. I'm showing it to you for the first time. Really, the real learning for you is to kind of just trace through the code on your own at your leisure, and you run through this a few times, and then you see how the workflow works. Here's AJAX demo 2, and this just returned a string. This string is from home controller. This one accepts a parameter, AJAX demo 2. The string you entered was, and then the param. The key with all this, of course, is that we're not submitting the entire page, and we're not doing an entire form post. We're being very strategic here. You know, bandwidth may be an issue. You may have limited resources. So maybe all you want to do is send a piece of information back. By the way, the reason you know that the page isn't, see if I hit a refresh here, the whole thing posts, or the whole thing refreshes back. But notice when I just do that piece, this doesn't change. That's how you know that the form hasn't posted. Now, and then we have this piece here where we're basically just, we're doing the exact same thing that we were doing up here, but I'm showing you an alternate way to do it, and also that we can be more interactive with our controllers by passing a parameter down and getting some information back. In a nutshell, that's Ajax, and that's what Ajax really provides to you. So when you look at this code, look at these two examples here, and they'll help you out a lot. Okay, so let's now go to the third part of this talk, which is JSON, stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Basically, we're talking about data. What happens if all you want to do is stream data back and forth from a controller to a view? If any of you are familiar with Mongo or CouchDB in terms of document-oriented databases, this will be very familiar to you. You know, here's an example of some JSON, an object that has a f name, first name, and last name property. First name MVC, last name conf. So that would be an example. And by the way, go back to the Nerd Dinner MVC app and look at how dinners are plotted on the. Okay, so looking at this simple JSON demo again, this is just like what I was doing with Ajax, except that instead of streaming HTML content back up to the view, this is just about data. And this is the first example I'm showing you where I'm making a post. Now in this case, I'm not passing any parameters down. You saw how we passed parameters in the Ajax demo. But then I have a callback function. So this basically means that when we're done this, go ahead and invoke this function. And you can see there's our alert. Let's go take a look at the simple JSON demo method on our controller, and let's see what we have there. It's pretty simple. That's if I went to the controller. Okay, so here is simple JSON demo. Now, one of the return types that we have in MVC is called JSON result. And you can see here, return JSON new. So I'm passing in a new object, I'm passing back a new object, first name John, last name Peterson. So then we go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint on this. And I'm going to go back to my home page, and I'm going to click the button. Now notice that we have our breakpoint. We're in debug mode, and I'm going to go ahead and just hit return, and then we get this information back. First name John, last name Peterson. Now the other thing that I'm going to do, and I think this will work fine, is I'm going to go back to demo, is I'm going to put a breakpoint there in the JavaScript. I'm going to go back to the page. I'm going to hit simple JSON. See here, I'm now in the controller. I'm going to hit continue. Notice that I am now in my JavaScript. This is the cool thing, Visual Studio. Now, here's a caveat. You must be using Internet Explorer to do this. If you use Firefox or something else, this won't work right for you. So Internet Explorer is the best client that you can use when developing this stuff and debugging. But check it out. If I put my mouse over data, see that? I got it. So one of the other knocks you hear about is like, oh, you know, this stuff is really difficult to debug and develop. No, it's not. It's actually quite simple to do after you get through the syntax and you get through, you know, you don't have IntelliSense on a lot of the, you get some IntelliSense on the JavaScript, but you know, it's not as rich object model as you're going to say have in the .NET space, but there's a lot there for you. Okay, so that's the simple piece, and you can see here then data dot, so that this is just an object that's coming back, data dot first name, data dot last name. All right, so we can do something a little bit more sophisticated. So I have another example here called get JSON data. I'm going to run that, and I have a breakpoint on this. Now all this is just some data that I've stubbed out. I have a class called state, and it has some properties on it. And I basically have built this big list up of all the states in the United States of America. And then what I'm doing here is basically invoking the JSON method, passing states as an object. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to step over this, and not much to really see here, but basically essentially what I did is we converted our C#.NET class, and we hammered it into an array of JSON objects that can now be passed back to the view. Let me go to our JSON demo. This is the big one. Let's take a look at this quickly. I basically have created an HTML variable. I am building, and by the way, I don't recommend you do this. This is more demonstration to show that you can actually do a bunch of this. I'm creating the HTML. I'm creating table headers here. And then what I'm doing here is I'm invoking the post, which I did, which is I'm going to put a breakpoint here. This JSON demo, again, no parameters getting sent down, and then here's my callback function. I'm not here yet. I'm still in the world of this, the controller call. What's going to happen? Well, for var item in data. So we have a for each. We're iterating over a collection here, and you can see what I'm doing here is I'm simply just cycling through all the items that I get back. Let me go ahead and continue on. I put the breakpoint there, so now I'm in this world. Let's take a look at data. Check it out. See that? This is now in the world of JavaScript. I'm now on my client. And now I can cycle through all this, and I can build this table up. And then once I'm through the loop, I'm going to go ahead and close the table tag off, put a break in, and I'm actually putting a button in here because I'm actually putting a new button in here to show another capability of jQuery. Well, let me take that breakpoint off and check it out. So imagine that you have a lot of data that you know, there's a query out there, there's some data that you have to stream, and you have to put it into your form, well, into your page. Well, this is how you can do it. And JSON is very lightweight. The other thing is, well, what if you have users and one user likes one look and feel and another user likes another look and feel? Well, remember that I put this button down here, and it's called change class, and there's an on click here for some function called change table class. Let's take a look at change table class. Change table class says for the state table, add class, and I just called this, I think it's called stats. Where is that? I'm adding a class here. Where is the class? Well, let's take a look at our project. Let's take a look at content. And in here, I should have a I have a style sheet called stats. When I hit the button here, one shot, I basically have changed. I've changed the styling. It's a very rudimentary example, but that's how you can do it. Now, where is that stats class? Bear with me one second. Did I put it here? Or did I put it in index? Not exactly sure where it is. Let me just see if I added it to site. I may have just added the thing to, I think I may have just added the class to site, which is what I think I did. Let me just look at that. There it is. Okay, that's what I did. Here's the stats. Here's the stats class. So I thought I had it as a separate style sheet. I didn't. So basically, all of this CSS got applied just like that. And so we can use jQuery. We can use jQuery to apply styles very easily. I'm about out of time, but basically, that is, in a nutshell, that's what we can do with jQuery and how we can use jQuery, JSON, AJAX to extend the reach of your MVC applications. And another cool thing about it is it's somewhat technology agnostic. This is really pure web development. So you write sites with this. You know, you're away from Flash. You know, if it needs to be iPhone capable, you know, this will work in that environment. And there's nothing, you know, really. The only thing is that people have to enable scripting on their side. It's pretty much an accepted rule today. But I hope that through this brief introduction, you know, you've seen the power that AJAX, JSON, jQuery can bring to your MVC applications. Are there any other questions?
Looks like one last question, and then we gotta bounce out for the next session.
Yep.
It's from Nade. When do you bind the jQuery functions to the DHTML events? On document.ready or somewhere else?
So there are a variety of ways that you can modularize your code. The deal is that by the time the page loads, one method that basically it is document ready is one way to do it. And from within that space, there are a lot of different ways to modularize the code. Again, what I would refer you to is Enterprise jQuery for some more up-to-date and sophisticated ways to do your binding. You can do it in line, which I don't suggest doing. I only show it, just show that you see how it works in case you encounter code like that. The key is that when the page loads, a lot of this code has to run again because it's not stateful. So when the page loads, all the binding has to occur. So that's certainly one way that you would want to do it. Are there any other questions?
Yep. So the next speaker hasn't shown up yet, so we'll just answer questions till he or she does.
Okay.
Is it possible to do some file upload kind of operations with jQuery?
Yes, it is. I mean, essentially, you can use jQuery to invoke your. I have not done it, but there are ways to do it. I would just query the no pun intended. Query the jQuery site. But also don't forget, too, there is MVC, and there's a whole powerful world of MVC and file results and file handling capabilities that we can handle, you know, with MVC. So the one thing I would want to caution folks in, it's like, hey, don't forget about all the stuff that the .NET framework and the ASP pipeline gives you. This is because at the end of the day, this is client-based technology. When you want to upload a file somewhere, you're going to have to connect to a server-side service somewhere.
Gotcha.
So that's always keep that in mind.
Thank you very much, John. We appreciate you coming out and showing folks the love today.
Appreciate it. Had a great time. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Have a good one, man. Oh, John, real quick, before we leave, do you have any contact information you want folks to be able to contact you if they have any more questions?
Yeah, my Twitter handle is John V. Peterson, and that's really the best way. And of course, I also blog on lowstechies.com, johnvpeterson.lowstechies.com. That's the best ways to get a hold of me. And here's my email, real quick. johnvpeterson@gmail.com.
This presentation was recorded at MVCConf. For more content like this, go to www.mvcconf.com.